extra small turnout so we know what we know what day it is. So welcome. Today is our move into stillness meeting, and we're going to continue with the same progression that we've been exploring over the past couple of weeks. So we're going to be, if possible, if reasonably comfortable to do so, then we'll be exploring lying on the back. So as usual, same things apply. So we're going to be lying, if possible, on the back, meaning on a firm, flat surface that is neither too firm nor not firm enough. So you have to find the right balance. You want it to be adequately comfortable, but not so cushiony that you're sinking into it and you can't feel anything. So you want to find that right balance. Usually that means not on the bed. Sometimes it means on the bed because some people in some circumstances need that much cushioning. But for most people, on the floor with a bit of padding, like a rug, carpets, yoga mat, blanket, that kind of thing is optimal. But, and I have to say it because otherwise I know what happens. People try to push through, and you have to, it's all a learning experience. Every single moment is a learning experience. So you have the opportunity to learn something valuable in every moment if you choose to do so. And that just requires that you show up with willingness and some remembrance of the fact that you can discover something valuable right now, always. So as you are, you're just observing yourself and you notice, what are you doing? Are you pushing too hard? Or are there some old programs running, say no pain, no gain, that you need to tough it out, that the only way that you can get benefit is if you suffer? You want to find that out. On the other hand, maybe you have some old programming running that says, this isn't for me, just zone out, get as comfortable as possible, fall asleep. You want to find out when these programs are running so that you are not run by them, because when you're aware, you have choice. So now, hopefully, you've come into the posture. If you find that lying down on the back is not for you today, then you choose something different, and that will be okay. You may not be able to follow along exactly with every detail, but you can modify. So I'll give the instruction as though you're lying on the back, assuming that you are. If you're not, then you'll have to modify for yourself. But so you're going to have the knees bent as usual. So the knees are in the direction of the ceiling, feet are on the floor near to the buttocks, not so close that it's uncomfortable, not so far that it's uncomfortable. Somewhere, it's like Goldilocks. We want right in between, right the middle way. So you want to find what is most stable, comfortable for you within these parameters. So generally we want to have the knees bent, feet on the floor near to the buttocks, neither too far apart nor too narrow. So you just experiment a little bit and find out how you can discover the stability of this position. You want to find out, how do you make it harder than it needs to be and let it be easier. So again, every moment is a learning opportunity. As you're lying here, you want to be aware, how are you making it harder on yourself than it needs to be? Because you almost certainly are. So, it's a good opportunity. Make it less hard on yourself. And it's usually these little things. It's little things that just have gone undetected. We are not properly detected. So it's an awareness game. You just slow down, relax, notice. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to become aware of the breath. So this is going to be the starting point of our exploration, is to notice the breath and allow for the breath to start to become more normalized. So as you'll recall from previous weeks, we've explored how excessive breathing, overbreathing is commonplace, and we've explored and we've talked about some of the negative consequences of that. And then we've explored a simple process for breath normalization, that is to bring the minute volume into a healthy range so that you're not depleting your carbon dioxide levels, so that you will be able to retain that carbon dioxide and all the benefits that come along with that. So you want to just first of all tune into the breath and don't try to make it match your idea of what it should be. Just start out by being aware of what it is. And for those who are just joining, we're lying on, if possible, we're lying on the back and we're starting to become aware of the breath. So you're noticing everything that you can about the breath in as relaxed of a way as possible, as you can. So you're noticing, for example, how large is the breath? Where is the breath felt? Is the breath felt in the belly? Is it felt in the chest? Is it felt in the throat? Is it felt on the front side of the body? Is it felt on the back side of the body? Is it felt on the left side, on the right side? What is the sense of pressure as you are inhaling and exhaling? Where do you feel that pressure, if there's any? Does that pressure feel good or not so good, or how else might it feel? You want to notice all of these things. And for those who are just joining, we're lying on the back and we're noticing the breath. So this breath is so complex. There's so many various factors that we can become aware of, and we want to become as aware of them as possible. So you're noticing the location, the size, the speed of the breath. Noticing that there's an inhalation and there's an exhalation, and you're noticing what is the what's the duration of each? Are they about the same? Is one longer than the other? And you can notice also the sense of satisfaction in the breath. So you notice, does the inhalation feel complete? Does it feel satisfying? Do you feel that is a good inhalation? Does the exhalation feel relaxed and satisfying, or is there a sense of urgency, spasming? So you want to be aware of all of these things and whatever else you can become aware of. And then we're going to start to introduce this intention, which is to allow for the breath to become even more relaxed, even more calm, even more gentle. So the mistake, I guess there are many mistakes that we could make, but one of the common mistakes would be to try to reduce the breath, to be aggressive in trying to reduce the breath, trying to aggressively calm the breath, which in fairly short order you'll find does not work very well. So you don't need to do that. That's the good news. And it won't be helpful. So don't be aggressive in trying to reduce the breath. Instead, just relax the breath. Allow for the breath to become more calm, more gentle, smoother, and see how relaxed can you be. So there's a vicious cycle that we can convert into a virtuous cycle. So the vicious cycle is that the breath is chaotic, excessive, unsatisfying, and that leads to increasing amounts of effort, which yield increasing amounts of distress, which goes back into the same cycle. So that's for 99+% of us, that's our starting point. That's what we're becoming aware of. And then we want to allow for that to become smoother, more orderly, more gentle, more satisfying, more healthy. And this is all possible through our intention. So it's with awareness, attention, and intention. So you want to give your attention to the breath, and you want to have the intention that you're allowing it to become calmer, smoother, gentler, more relaxed. So you can do this in a variety of ways. I'm going to suggest some. These are just for your consideration. You don't need to have a sense of being locked into any of these. They're just ideas for your consideration. So one is to bring your attention to the nostrils, and you can notice what the sensation of the air passing through the nostrils is, both on the inhalation and the exhalation. And you'll notice that there's a certain speed at which the air moves. You can feel a certain pressure of the air, a sensation of the air flowing. You can maybe hear, if you're otherwise quiet enough, you can really listen and hear the sound of the air flowing through the nostrils. So you're aware of all of that, and you can just simply start to have the intention to allow that to become calmer, gentler, more relaxed. So you notice that the sound of the air can reduce just a little bit. So we're obviously here not striving for some great changes in anything all of a sudden. We want this to be very gentle, smooth, slow, imperceptible. So if you make too big of a change, it's going to be done with force. It will be too aggressive. It will backfire on you. It will not work. So you'll get feedback very quickly because you'll start to experience discomfort, distress. So you're just noticing that you can allow for it to be a little calmer, that the air can move a little bit more gently, a little bit less sound. Just a little bit, just a tiny little bit at a time. So another possibility is that you can become aware of your chest and abdomen, and you can just have the intention that every inhalation and every exhalation will allow you to relax the chest and the abdomen even more deeply. So you're allowing for each inhalation and each exhalation to bring about greater relaxation in the chest and the abdomen. So here too, if you're too aggressive, if you're trying to force relaxation, that will not work. I mean, for obvious reasons, but you'll also get pretty rapid feedback that it's not working, because you'll get the opposite effect. You'll produce distress, spasming. So you always get feedback. It's just a matter of how intelligently you can process that feedback. So the moment that, as soon as you become aware of any tension or distress or urgency or discomfort, then it's up to you to recognize that that's feedback that you're trying too hard, and therefore that you need to relax more. You need to be more much gentler in your approach. Okay, so another idea for your consideration is that you can become aware of the size of the inhalation. So you're just noticing the inhalation. Each time you inhale, and you're noticing about what size that is. Don't try to change it, just be aware of it. And when you become fairly comfortable that you can gauge the average size of the inhalation, you're going to then reduce the size of the inhalation just slightly, just a little bit, 2 to 5%, not a big change, just a small change. And you're going to maintain that same slightly reduced inhalation so that it's a constant. You're not reducing it each time. You reduce it once, and then you want to maintain that same slightly reduced inhalation. So the idea here is also same as the others, that it's gentle, it's very, very mild, because if you are overly aggressive, or if you're aggressive at all, you'll get pretty quick feedback, feedback that it's not feeling so good. So you got to take that feedback intelligently and don't continue to push aggressively, because that's the wrong way. So this is a very powerful exercise just in and of itself. And you could do this probably for the rest of your life and never have perfect mastery over it. So if you feel challenged by it, then that's okay. That makes sense. You're in the right place. And it's really good news in the sense that when you find it challenging, what you'll notice is there's a variety of things that come up that prove challenging about it. One is just the ability to keep the focus. So you're learning how to have focus. So that's a skill that can be trained, and you're training that. So chances are, unless you've done that kind of training in the past, you don't have an enormous skill of concentration or focus. So it makes sense that as you're learning that skill, that you might frequently experience your lack of skill in that area, and you might have some I don't know what to call it, some unwanted thoughts about that. You might not like it. You might have some negative opinions about it. You might feel some feelings that you don't like about that you might call frustration or something along those lines. But instead, you want to take that as a good sign. Here you are, you've encountered something where it's an edge for you. That is, you're challenged in this area. So it's like the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Okay, so in the very same way, whatever your weak points are in life, wherever you lose focus, wherever you lose your vision, wherever you become distraught, distressed, anxious, overwhelmed, hopeless, all these kinds of things, frustration, anger, resentment, these are the weak points. So when you encounter them, don't make the common mistake of perceiving that it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a very good thing that you're encountering them, because when you encounter your weak points, you have the opportunity, a very important opportunity, to be able to make improvements. So instead of seeing it as a negative, see that it's a very good thing. So you may find one challenge is that you just have a difficult time maintaining the focus. Another challenge that you might experience, I say might because it's fairly common, is that you might perceive that that it's too, you might have a variety of negative thoughts about it. So you might experience negative thoughts along the lines of, this is too hard, I can't do it. Or you might experience negative thoughts such as, This is inadequate. This won't help me. This is not enough to help me. I need some other thing that's more whiz bang, more aggressive, more violent. And then here's another thing that you might notice. Another challenge that you might notice is that you might actually find that you have a very big challenge in not being aggressive. So to non-violence is oftentimes our biggest challenge because we have such a tendency toward violence. We don't even know it. It's invisible to us mostly. So that's again why this is an amazing opportunity when you encounter that violence within yourself, when you encounter that aggression within yourself, when you encounter that impatience. That's a really wonderful thing because that means that you are in a position of power when you become aware of that, because otherwise it's operating unconsciously, and that's not a position of power. But when it's conscious, then you have choice, and so that's a position of power. So you're just aware of your breath, and you're very gently playing with this intention to allow for the breath to normalize. That is, to allow for a reduction of excessive breathing. That means to allow for the minute volume to reduce. And so we can allow for everything, the breath to become calmer, gentler, more relaxed, slower, perhaps slightly smaller. And as you're doing this, you should begin to encounter some mild, completely tolerable air hunger. And so what does that mean? Because sometimes people don't know what that experience is. They're not sure what's being referred to. It means that you have an urge to take a slightly larger breath, but you don't take the slightly larger breath. You continue with the gentler, calmer, relaxed, slightly smaller, slower breath, so long as that air hunger remains completely manageable, completely tolerable, not particularly uncomfortable. So especially early on in this exploration, and by early on, I mean for the first couple of weeks, months, maybe years, I don't know, but you may find that it's the biggest challenge is being able to ride that edge. That it's like riding a wave where you're experiencing very consistent, mild, tolerable air hunger. So for the breathing portion of our exploration, that's our goal, is to encounter that edge of that very mild air hunger and to ride that wave indefinitely, to be able to maintain that same very gentle sense of tolerable air hunger. Just the sense that you have an impulse to take a larger breath, but you don't. So this will, over time, done consistently, will reset or restore the set point for your carbon dioxide tolerance in your nervous system, so that it will become second nature, or first nature, I guess. So this is our primary aim, and as I've been hinting at over the last couple of weeks, it is definitely my experience that this breath normalization is one of, if not the most powerful adjuncts to somatics and that I'm aware of. And it works, I guess. I'm not sure all the mechanisms by which it works. I can see several ways in which it works. I'll mention a few of them. Physiologically, carbon dioxide is we say a relaxant. So on the flip side is if your carbon dioxide levels are depleted, you have inadequate levels of this of carbon dioxide, which maintains healthy relaxation throughout the system. So if you don't have adequate levels, then you're going to have unhealthy levels of tension. So just by increasing or normalizing levels of CO2, physiologically, there's going to be some relaxation that will take place. Further clarifying the same point is that, or in a similar vein, when there's inadequate carbon dioxide levels, then there's inadequate oxygen in the tissues because it's all bound to the hemoglobin. So you need the carbon dioxide in order to release the oxygen from the hemoglobin so that it can get into the cells. And so you're in a chronic CO2 depleted state, which most people are living in. There is going to be inadequate oxygenation. So everything's running poorly, non-optimally. So you're going to have tension built in to the system as a result of that. When that's normalized, everything's going to be able to relax a little bit better. Now, what I want you to start to notice, and momentarily we're going to start to introduce some movement along with the breath awareness. I want you to start to notice that between every inhalation and exhalation, and between every exhalation and inhalation, there is a transition. That is, obviously, once you complete the exhalation, there is a moment in which there's no longer an exhalation, but there's not yet an inhalation. And so that's what I'm referring to as a transition. Between is neither inhalation nor exhalation. It's neither one of them. And so of these two transitions, I particularly want, you can be aware of both of them, but I particularly want you to be aware of the transition between the exhalation and the inhalation. And the reason that I want you to be particularly aware of that is because that is the moment in which there is the opportunity for maximal relaxation of the musculature of the body, because there's, in that one moment, there is nothing that compels any muscular activity. In every other moment, there is at least a small requirement for some muscular activity, because as long as we're breathing, there's some muscular activity. But in that one moment between the exhalation and the inhalation, there's an opportunity for all of the musculature of the body to be completely relaxed. So it's a unique opportunity, and well, a unique recurrent opportunity. So it's one that you want to be aware of. So you want to start to notice on this transition between exhalation and inhalation, what is it that compels the inhalation? So you wanted to observe in your actual experience to notice what is it that compels the inhalation, because there seems to be a compulsion to inhale, but what exactly is that? We don't usually know. We're not usually that aware. It's just, we have some sensation, there's just some conditioning there. It just operates unconsciously. We don't really pay any attention, but you can give your attention to it and you can be curious about it, and you can start to observe directly right now to see, can you find out what is this compulsion to inhale? So very important, you're not trying to prevent the inhalation. That would only result in unnecessary distress, but you can observe as carefully as possible to see what is this that is compelling the inhalation, so that you can get clearer on what is that signal, what does it really mean, is the inhalation actually necessary at that moment, maybe and maybe not. So you just want to be curious about it, observing as carefully as possible to see what is it that is actually, why do I inhale? Why do I do that? What is actually needed? Does it need to happen right in this moment, or is it just a habit? What's the sequence of things that occur here? And is there any element of choice? And can that choice be exercised in a stress-free way? So a lot of things to explore. So you're noticing this transition between exhalation and inhalation, and you're noticing what actually is what exactly is that? What is it that's going on there in that transition? And is there any element of choice? Is there any volition on your part? So you're just observing. And then what you might notice is that as you're observing in this way, that you start to notice something maybe interesting, which is that you can't really find exactly what it is that this, how do you don't know exactly what the signal is that indicates for sure that you must inhale now. It's not as black and white as it maybe seemed at first. So there's now this area that's kind of gray. Before it was black and white because there was just inhale or exhale. Now when you start to look at it, you realize perhaps that it's not so black and white. It's somewhat unclear. There's definitely a point, if you wait long enough, there's a point at which the signal increases in strength, and that the strength of the signal alone is enough to compel the inhalation. Because if you wait long enough, eventually it will happen that you'll inhale. And you'll probably notice that leading up to the inhalation, there's just this increasing intensity of the signal. However you understand that signal, it doesn't, we don't necessarily know exactly what it is, but the intensity increases to a point such that your nervous system begins to interpret that as distress. And that's what eventually prompts the inhalation. But as you keep watching, you'll see that it does not get, it remains gray. It's not clearly delineated in terms of there's some exact moment in which it becomes crystal clear that this is the real true signal that you must inhale. So the more you look, the grayer it becomes, probably. And what's interesting about this is then you can start to play around with it a little bit. Now, it depends how much space you have, because if you have we introduced this idea of a control pause as a metric two or 3 weeks ago. So if you're not familiar with that idea, you can, I'll just briefly explain it, which is this idea of control pause is, it's a metric, the number of seconds in which you can hold the breath at the end of an exhalation before you feel the first impulse to inhale. So that if that control pause is low, like let's say less than 10 seconds, then your ability to comfortably hold the breath in a stress-free way is obviously very low. I mean, that's what that means, among other things. So the so if you have a relatively low control pause, then you want to be just aware of that and don't have high expectations. Don't demand a lot of yourself in regard to this particular exploration at first. But wherever you are, whether you have a very low control pause or otherwise, this is something that you can begin to explore, and it will be valuable to you. So you're noticing that maybe as you're observing this transition between exhalation and inhalation, that there's a little bit more space there than you thought. Maybe not a lot, but maybe a little bit. Maybe there's at least 1 second in there. Maybe there's 2 seconds. Maybe there's 3 seconds. Maybe there's 4 seconds. Maybe there's 5 seconds. Now you'll have to be really honest about it, because if you're demanding or expecting that you need to hold the breath for as long as possible, and that's your goal, and that's the only way that you'll ever be happy in life, then that's a lot of pressure, and I wouldn't recommend that you do that. So don't do that to yourself. Let it be gentle and light, playful, but and know that what you're aiming for here with this particular exploration is just to start to find out how much space is actually there in a regular, consistent, sustainable way, so that how much space is actually there, not how much can you hold the breath, because that's a different thing. That's not what we're doing here. We're not trying to see how long can you hold the breath. We're looking to see how much space is actually there. So the idea is that you've been unconsciously, artificially breathing excessively, just because the set point was set in that way in your nervous system. So there actually is more space that's in there that you just are not presently aware of, but you can become aware of it. So we're wanting to discover how much space is there. For everybody, there's some more space there than what they're aware of. Could be 1 second, could be 2 seconds, could be 3 seconds. And the question is, are you still doing reduced breathing with this? Yes. Yes, as long as you're following the guidelines. So as long as it's comfortable, or you want it to be in that space of between comfort and discomfort. You're riding the edge. If it's strenuous, too uncomfortable, distressing, overwhelming, then you just went too far. So then you ease up, just let it go for a moment, and when you're comfortable again, then you resume. Okay, so you're noticing though how much space is there, because there's some amount of space there, then more space than what you're accustomed to. You're accustomed to inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, exhaling, all more or less unconsciously. And here we're now observing, bringing particular attention to this gap between the exhalation and the inhalation. And we're finding out how much space is actually there, because there is some. We just weren't aware of it. So, in other words, the space is actually there, is there. It's not, you're not creating it or inventing it or forcing it. It's just there, and you're gently discovering it. And so in this exploration, that means that it should start to smooth out. You should start to find that, oh yeah, there is a little bit of a gap there. There's a 1 second gap, let's say. A 1 second gap between the end of the exhalation and when I actually need to inhale in order to maintain a sense of calm, sustainability, so that I'm not gasping for air in the next breath. And so as you are observing this, then what starts So what should start to happen is that you're finding that you can allow for that little bit of space to become clearer to you in your awareness, so that it starts to actually fill out. That is, that you're able to, if it's 1 second space, that there it is, with each breath, you find, yeah, there it is again, there it is again, there it again. You're not forcing it. It's not aggressive. You're just discovering it. There it is. Okay, so now, like I said, everybody's going to have they're going to find a different amount of space there. If you are finding that the amount of space is very small, or like less than a second, then you just stay with that. That's enough for you for now. If you find that there is 1 second or more of space there, then I want you to start to bring a particular kind of awareness and intention into that space, so that each time that there's a rhythm that you're aware of. So there's inhalation, transition, exhalation, transition, inhalation, transition, exhalation, transition. And so each time you come to that transition between the exhalation and the inhalation, you're going to start to bring a particular kind of attention, in which you're wanting now to allow that space to be deeply relaxed. So what you're going to find is that this particular space, this space of the transition between the exhalation and the inhalation, can be, as I've already pointed this out, but I'll say it again. It has the potential to be very, very profoundly relaxed, more so than any other moment. But out of habit, it's not as relaxed as it could be. So you have awareness of this space, because we've just cultivated that. You have some awareness of the space, and I want you to now start to bring your attention and intention into that space every time that you encounter it, in such a way that you relax even more deeply. Now, obviously, the longer that transition is, the bigger the space, in a sense, the more opportunity there is for you to explore relaxing more deeply. But even if it's just 1 second, you'll find that it's enough for you to start to get the hang of what I'm pointing out. So it's a very definite thing that you can experience when you have your attention in this particular way, with the intention to relax more deeply. You bring that into this space, you will find that it's a very definite experience in which there is a deeper release. So it's up to you where you direct that attention, in terms of what sensations, what parts of the body, but you can play around with that. Now, what we're going to do momentarily is we're going to combine this with a little bit of movement, and you'll find that you can, that will help to direct your attention to specific areas of the body that will allow you to get that deeper release in that part of the body. So at this stage, though, we're just starting. It's a somewhat subtle technique, but it's a very powerful technique. So I'm just step by step introducing you to the different components of it. So the essential aspect of this technique, is you have to be able to be aware of that space between the exhalation and the inhalation. You need to, so when I say aware of the space, I'm talking about aware of the space that's naturally there, not trying to impose your maximum breath hold time. That's a different thing. Yes, you can do it. Yes, that it can be used in somewhat similar way to the technique that I'm introducing you to, but for now, that's not what I want you to do. I do not want you to do a maximum breath hold time. That's not what we're doing. We're just exploring to find out about the space that's already there. It might be 1 second, it might be 2 seconds, it might be whatever, but you're finding that out. Then you're bringing your attention into that space every time you encounter it in a particular way, which allows for you to relax more deeply. So now, for those who are ready, we'll introduce a little bit of movement and we'll combine it with this technique so that you can start to get a feel for it. So we're lying on the back. You can do this with any movement. But the movement we're going to do is just simple movement of the pelvis. That's the whole body, but it's in somatics, it's usually called arch and flatten or arch and curl. So you're aware of your back on the, I'm going to just say floor. You might not be on the floor, but you can translate that for yourself. So you're aware of the sensation of your back on the floor. You're aware of that, of your spine. So you're aware of the spine all the way from the skull, down the neck, upper back, mid back, lower back, all the way down to the tailbone. And you want to be aware of the contact of the back and the spine with the floor. So you're not trying to fix anything, correct anything, just be aware. And then what I'd like you to do is you're going to gently roll your pelvis. So you could visualize or imagine your pelvis like a bowl or like a rolling pin, whatever works best for you. And I want you to imagine it rolling downward, that is in the direction toward your feet versus toward your head. So rolling downward, and this will cause your lower back to arch slightly. Now you want to do this with complete control. So it's not this is not a game of how much can you arch your back. There will be no prizes given out for the biggest arch in the lower back. That's not what we're doing. This is a game of self-discovery, self-knowledge, self-exploration. So you're wanting to just discover, how do you do this? And how can you do it most pleasurably, most efficiently, most comfortably, most pleasurably? I think I already said that. That's the game that you want to play. So now you don't need to hold it forever. You just release, come to neutral. Okay, so in this particular move, you might recall our talk about pandiculation, and this is weeks ago, but I've introduced this term pandiculation. So it's the eccentric contraction. So here, when we're arching the back, rolling the pelvis downward, that's the, oh, what is that contraction called? I can't think of what it's called, but anyway, that's the non-pandiculation. When we release to neutral, that is the pandiculation phase of this movement. So that's the phase of the movement that's of particular importance. We'll get the most benefit by bringing the most tension to that phase. So do repeat this several more times. So you're going to roll the pelvis down, arching the back gently. And then you're going to slowly release to neutral. Now notice if you have a tendency to do something other than just release to neutral. Maybe you have a tendency to actually actively roll your pelvis in the opposite direction of what you did a moment ago, right? So you roll your pelvis down and you have several options now. One is that you can slowly release. That's a pandiculation. That's what we want. The other is you can actively roll your pelvis in the opposite direction of what you did originally. Now, to somebody who's a naive observer, they might not be able to tell the difference between the two, but you know the difference between the two because you have that ability, and you are unconsciously doing the latter all of the time. This is about you're compensating for your sensory motor amnesia. You are compensating for habits of frustration, impatience, and so forth. You're compensating by exerting yourself unnecessarily. And what that does is over time, it just gets you wound up, tied up into knots. So we need to be very aware here as you're releasing, you want to release to neutral. Don't engage any unnecessary muscular effort in order to do the movement. This pandiculation phase is done by gravity plus your conscious slow release of the muscular activity that you use in order to produce the initial movement. So you're not compensating. You're not trying to reverse it. You're releasing. Okay, so really, really important point. It makes all the difference. You can roll yourself around on the floor forever, and you will not get the benefits unless you bring the proper attention and intention into the mix. So you have to slow down and be aware of this pandiculation phase, and with everything that you can bring to it, you want to slowly release. Do not engage any unnecessary muscular activity because that will not be productive. Okay, so now we're going to combine these two things. Now, up to this point, you might be thinking, I don't, this doesn't seem like much of anything. I don't get it. But now we're going to connect the dots. Okay. So what I'd like you to do now is if you're able, don't, if you find you're not able to do so just yet, that's okay. Don't worry about it. It will come. But I want you to see if it's possible, if you have enough of a gap there, enough of a gap in that space of that transition, that you could imagine doing this, then I want you to, you're gonna be as relaxed and restful on the floor as you can. So you're in a neutral position. And then you're breathing, obviously. And when you're ready, when you come to that end of the exhalation, you're going to hold your breath there for just as long as you can do sustainably. So you're not trying to push to a maximum breath hold, just whatever is comfortable sustainably. Even if that's just 1 second, 2 seconds, that's okay. And during that time, I want you to, now you're going to relax everything as deeply as possible. And you're going to do this movement that we've just done with the pelvis. So there's a lot of variables to play with here, and we'll cover them in a little bit more detail momentarily, but just do that first, do it a few times, and see if you can start to get a feel for it. So the idea is that the movement is happening in that gap, during that space when there's neither inhalation nor exhalation, and in which you're relaxing as deeply as possible. Yes, so then there's a question: how to synchronize this ideally with the pandiculation, which is a good question. Shows you're paying attention, you're awake. That's good. Yeah. So so to get, in my experience, which I guess is what we're going on here, you get the best. I get the best results when I give as much, if I can bring as much to the pandiculation as possible. And so if I can combine the pandiculation with that natural breath hold and relaxing deeply, consciously, that gives me the best results by far. Takes the results I would get otherwise and multiplies them by at least 10. Really, I'd say it's a lot more than that. But so that's what I find. I get the best results that way. At this point, though, since you're just getting the basics, you're just learning the basics, I would say don't worry about trying to get it all lined up and perfect like that. At this point, I just want you to start to play around with it, because we've introduced, even though I know it doesn't seem like a lot, we've introduced quite a lot here, and it is subtle, so it does require us. It requires that you give it some attention and play with it in order to really get clarity on the subtleties of it. So it doesn't matter at this stage. I wouldn't say that you need to be concerned about trying to pair up the breath hold exactly with the pandiculation, but probably that will give you more optimal results. So that would be a good direction to move toward, but because it's so early right now in your introduction to this technique, I would say don't too many moving parts, so don't be too concerned about that at this stage. What I want you to do is mostly, so at this, there's the basis of this technique is your ability to do these small breath holds in a non-stressed way. So that's what I want you to be mostly giving your attention to at this time, until which time that's easy peasy for you, because that's the basis. Then we're introducing movement on top of that, and so the movement obviously is a complicating factor because it's adding a lot more to be aware of into the mix. So that takes a little bit of practice in order to be able to do both at the same time. And that's what I'm wanting you to do. So first, to just be aware of the breath, to be aware of that space, to start to explore that space of the transition between exhalation and inhalation, and then adding this next layer of complexity, which is to add movement into the mix. So that's a lot, actually. And fortunately for you, it's also, we're at an hour, so I'm not going to give you more than that for this week. But what I'd like you to do, what I encourage you to do, is explore just what we've done here today over the next week. So practice, start out by having a few minutes of breath awareness, moving into having awareness of the space between the exhalation and inhalation, and finding how you can align yourself with that, so that you're shifting out of the unconscious mechanical habits of breathing and into alignment with nature. So you're not overlaying just, oh, gotta breathe, because that's what the brain just is in the habit of doing. You want to shift that to, what is the body actually needing? What is optimal? Aligning with nature, being natural, spontaneous rather than mechanical. So you're making that shift, finding that space that's naturally there, and that space will increase over time, but it will increase with, generally, I think it's better with gentle, sustainable approaches. So our aim right now is we're not trying to increase it. That will just be a natural byproduct. But you're aware of that. That's what you're giving your attention to, and then when you're able to do that much, you can begin to introduce this movement. We're doing this arch and flatten. So you're rolling the pelvis downward and then releasing to neutral, and you're starting to explore how you can pair the movement with this breath awareness, ideally, so that the release to neutral, pandiculation phase, is coordinated with the natural sustainable breath hold. But that's just it. That's a goal to work toward, not necessarily one that you should hold yourself to being successful at immediately, because that's a lot to be aware of. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's an enormous amount to be aware of. At least for me, maybe you're much more advanced than me, but I find that to be a lot to be aware of. So hopefully you're not going to hurt yourself, because I've really done my best to give you good instruction that should prevent you from hurting yourself. So I don't think I need to say more about that, but I'll just say, don't hurt yourself. Remember, I've cautioned against being aggressive. So it's up to you to tell the truth about that. Notice when you're being aggressive. Know that will not give you good results. The temptation is there. I understand. That's why it exists, because there's something conditioned into us that assumes that that's going to give us some kind of positive result, but it doesn't. So it's up to you to be honest about it and to know that will not give me a good result. It's up to me to choose to be gentle. It's up to me to choose to be calm. This will give me the best result. It definitely will give you the best result. Anything else is not going to give you as good of a result. So some of them can give you disastrous results. So you have to be honest about that. So again, please don't hurt yourself. It's really powerful, honestly, it's really powerful techniques. I'm giving them to you in a way that they're, if you follow the instruction, you'll only have good results. But if you refuse to do it in that gentle way, then you could certainly hurt yourself. So don't do that. If you have any questions, concerns, doubts, anything else that comes up, let me know. You have a way to reach me, so you can do that. And I hope that you have very wonderful results with this. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Take care. Blessings to you all.